Welcome back, friends. This is Dr. Chandrasekhar here to present NEET 2023 lecture series. So we are seeing 11th NCERT Biology Living World chapter through. Okay, a part 2 of first chapter Living World. So moving on. So in the last video, we have seen about what are the important introduction of the properties of living world, like growth, reproduction, metabolism, consciousness, response to stimulus. So moving on, the classification of organisms. Okay, we have to know about few important things. That is zoo. Of course, in our childhood, right now we will be excited to go to zoological parks, where we can see captivated animals, the animals which have been under human control. Okay, the beauty of these animals are they're taken care by humans, so that the species which are in extinction can be saved. Of course, we can learn the behavior and expose to the general public. Okay, so there is another term called museum. The difference between a zoo and a museum is, if you see in the case of zoo, you may see, only living organisms. Okay, but in the case of museum, you will preserve the extinct organisms, the fossils of extinct organisms. So here comes the question: what are called fossils? Okay, so about fossils are carbon dating, that is radiocarbon dating of C14. Everything you can find in exclusive videos in our physics lecture series. Okay. So moving on, botanical garden. So in the case of living organisms, that are particularly animals, we have seen zoo. The dead organisms, we have seen museum. The same way, in the case of plants, the living organisms you can see in the botanical garden, and dead organisms, that is after its death, we will preserve them in herbarium. So that's the difference between zoo, museum, botanical garden, and herbarium. So it's a very important, crucial term. What we are going to see here now are taxonomical hierarchy. Taxonomical hierarchy. So organisms around us are always different, right? But we are trying to categorize them in a single flow. So friends, it will be easy for us to understand. This is a very classical hierarchy, like kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So before going into human classification among them, let us try to understand this. So always it will be easy for us if we have a shortcut. So my dear friends, this order is quite easy, but even though with shortcut it will be very easier for you. And the shortcut what I'm using here is keep, pond, clean, or frog, get sick. So just you can take the first letter of the mnemonics and you can fit over it. Where keep, pond, clean, K for kingdom, P for phylum, C for clean, O for order, F for family, and G for genus, and S for sick. So keep, pond, clean, or frog, get sick. So in that order, you can remember all these 7 categories. Okay. Taking human as an example, we are keeping humans in kingdom Animalia. So along with kingdom Animalia, it includes all chordates, sea stars, sea earthworms, snails, jellyfish, sponges. It's a huge category, right? Moving on, what phylum we belong to? We belong to the phylum called chordates. Okay. The chordates are none other than they are having notochord. They are having notochord in their backbone. Apart from that, we have vertebrates. So what's the difference between chordates and vertebrates means? Subphylum of chordates is called vertebrata. Subphylum of chordate is called vertebrates. Okay. Moving on, we belong to a class called Mammalia. So as I said before in the previous video, chordates are of different types. Okay, 5 important classes are there, like aves, who we remember, pisces means which live in water, aves which flies, reptiles. Yes, hope you remember, my dear friends. Amphibians which live in both land and water, and finally our mammals. So mammals are the only organisms which are viviparous, which give birth to young ones and feed through mammary glands. By the way, the name came. Among the mammals, there are several animals, like you see animal like elephant, or the carnivores like lion, tiger, a number of things, in which we belong to a particular category called primates. Under primates, again there are 2 important categories. like old world monkeys and new world monkeys all together, and our close relatives called apes, and we hominids, humans. So all these belong to the order called primates. Moving on, we belong to a particular family called Hominidae. Okay, so this understanding about Hominidae will help us to understand about our origin in this world, like Australopithecus and Ramapithecus. These kind of important informations we will see in an exclusive lecture in the case of human evolution. And moving on, we belong to genus Homo and species Sapiens. The specialty of Homo is all other co-species belonging to our genus are extinct now, like Homo habilis, Homo erectus are no more. So we are the only species left out in our genus Homo. That's why we are called monotypic species. Monotypic species. But whereas if you take other organisms, in the case of tiger, lion and all, you can see Panthera leo, Panthera tigris and so and so. But in the case of humans, we are the only organisms left out in our genus. So, humans are always excited to know about classification of organisms. How we can classify the organisms which we look around. However, the initial attempt of classifying organisms are made by Aristotle. So, he classified organisms in the case of plants as just simply trees, herbs and shrubs. Trees, herb and shrub. Whereas in the case of animals, he classified into with blood or without, with red blood or without red blood. Okay, with the red blood or without red blood. So in that way, Aristotle have classified. But Carolus Linnaeus made the first attempt of classifying organisms. Okay, that's why he claimed as father of classification, father of taxonomy in any terms. So what attempt he have made is he divided organisms into two types, like kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. So in the case of kingdom Plantae, he categorized all the organisms with cell wall. Okay, means plants with cell wall. They are autotrophic mode of nutrition, means they should produce their own food, and they do not locomote. They cannot move from one place to another place. They can move from the place where it is being present. That is static. The trees, herbs and shrubs can move and they can wave, right? But they cannot shift their places as humans does. So we should know the difference between movement and locomotion, my dear friends. Movement means another place. Locomotion means changing the location. As the name suggests, loco means changing the location. That can be happen only in the case of animals. And no response to response stimulus. But this statement is totally wrong, right? They always respond. The best example is touch me not plant. In the case of kingdom Animalia, how he categorized Carolus Linnaeus means those who do not have cell wall. It is true. But what about their mode of nutrition again is heterotrophic is true. Locomotion is present and response to external stimulus is there. But a lot of drawbacks are there in this classification. So to overcome the drawbacks, another important classification have been made by R.H. Whitaker. Okay, R.H. Whitaker make 5 kingdom of classification. Based upon the drawbacks, this R.H. Whitaker have expanded another phylum called fungi, and of course another phylum called Protista and Monera. So what are these monirans? Monirans are none other than they are the sole members of prokaryotes. In the case of Monera, the organisms are prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are none other than, as the name suggests, pro means primitive. This is etymology, my dear friends. Whatever the word in the biology have been given, you want to know about splitting the words and trying to understand the root word, a root meaning of it. The word karyon stands for nucleus. So altogether it is read as primitive nucleus. I'm talking about monirans. The monirans are primitive nucleus. Means they do not have a proper nucleus. Rather, they have a nucleus kind of structure called nucleoid. That's why they are categorized into prokaryotes, primitive nucleus. Whereas all other 4, like Protista, fungi, Plantae, Animalia, all things belong to a category called eukaryotes. So what does the word eukaryote stands for? Eu means true. Karyon means nucleus. So it means true nucleus. True nucleus. As the figure suggests, they have a proper nuclear membrane around them. See, my dear friends, we will consider a single thing as a room when we have walls around it, right? Without wall, we can't say that as a room. It is just always an open place. The same way, a cell with a nucleus enclosed by nuclear membrane is called as true nucleus. So this is the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We might have studied well, but just a refreshment for you guys. Nuclear membrane. Fine. So apart from that, we all know Monera are unicellular mostly. The same way protistans. Protistans are unicellular. Unicellular eukaryotes, Monerans are unicellular prokaryotes. Moving on, these fungus are heterotrophic. Okay, this fungus, plant, animalia are heterotrophic, but exclusively this fungus cannot produce their food, right? But whereas plants are called as autotrophic. Plants are called as autotrophic. We'll see about each and every category exclusively in the forthcoming lectures. See, compared to five kingdom classification, there are other two gentlemen, Call and Woose. Okay, they divided six kingdom, means they classified bacteria further into eubacteria and archaebacteria. Eubacteria and archaebacteria. The word EU stands for true, as I mentioned before. So what they're trying to say here is the bacteria which is existing even today with the normal characteristics are called as eubacteria, whereas archae, the word archaeology, you might have heard, right? So the word archae means ancient. So the bacteria which formed when the world have been formed, that is extreme conditions, are called as archaebacteria. High temperature, high salt condition, high methane conditions. So those bacteria which survive in these conditions are called as archaebacteria. Whereas a normal bacteria with four shapes like coccus, bacillus, spiral-like, vibrio, all are come under a category called eubacteria. Apart from all other four things we have just discussed a couple of minutes ago. So coming to bacteria again, as I said, those who can live in methane conditions are called methanobacterium. Okay, those who can live in high temperature are called thermoxylophiles. Or same way, halogen conditions are called halophiles, so on so. In the case of eubacteria, there are two major categories like gram-positive and gram-negative, based upon the staining what they acquire. So this is just a representation of an archaebacteria, where they are trying to get from the geysers. And in the case of eubacteria, as I said, four shapes, right? Spherical shape are called as coccus, and rod shape bacteria are called as bacillus, and spiral shape are called as spirillus. My dear friends, it is important to know about their subcategories, right? We will see in the future lectures. And of course, there is another important thing called comma shaped, called vibrio. Accept that this is comma. Yeah. Okay. To expand further, you can see, right? Even the coccus, there are two types, like a spherical shape, which are in filamental forms, as you see here. The filamental forms of coccus are called as streptococcus, whereas if they occur in clusters, they are called as staphylo. Okay, filamentous coccus are called as streptococcus, and clusteral coccus is called as staphylococcus, as you see here. Same in the case of streptobacilli and coccobacilli. The comma shape is called as vibrio. These are the real pictures, my dear friends. And cornybacterium, helicobacterium, or other shapes apart from the normal four shapes. Moving on to cyanobacteria. Of course, the cyanobacteria are the first autotrophs of our living world, right? After the ocean have been formed, these autotrophs have started synthesizing photosynthesize glucose, right? That is very important. And a special feature of these autotrophs, you can find heterocyst, where nitrogen fixation occurs. Again, this is not algae, this is a misnomer. It is a cyanobacteria. Cyan is a color, consists of both blue and green. And of course, it's an interesting bacteria called PPLO, like pleuro pneumonia-like organisms. Pleura pneumonia-like organisms. As the name suggests, pleura means the covering of lungs. Pleura means covering of lungs, and the pneumonia have occurred. Okay, these bacteria have been derived from this pneumonia of cattle in the lungs. So that the name have occurred, PPLO.